Шановні пані.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we continue working on the details and discussion. We discuss that plane from Malaysia. We have Ihor Romanenko, Lieutenant General in reserve and professor and military expert. He's a deputy general staff of Ukraine 2006-2007.
Co-deputy chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of Ukraine Armed Forces in 2006-2010. Будь ласка.
Доброго дня.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy that I have such an opportunity to talk to you. But it's sad that we are here because of such a cause. Because as a military expert, I will try. I'm relatively free from official position. I will try to express my point of view about the events of yesterday with Boeing 777. Probably I can do that because of my service. I was a military man for 40 years in Soviet and army, and also in the army of independent Ukraine in each almost 20 years, and also in the ministry, in the structures of Ministry of Defense for 4 years, and also from 4 of my 5 educations, and 3 of them are military. The first 2 institutions are related to Air Force and also anti-Air Force and Minsk engineering missile military school. That was quite a serious school, military school, and also command academy in Kalaniv, that is Tver in Russia after Zhukov. In addition to that, my service was related to exploitation of different anti-aircraft systems, including Buk, and we were shooting on Soviet test fields, on Ukrainian test fields, and also on Russian test fields. That's why. Let's move directly to this event. I believe that you are the audience that is informed well from different sources about the accident. But the question is to which extent you can trust and how to give that information to your readers or to your audience. My task is to convince you that that happened. First of all, because of the position of our northern neighbor and armed forces and those militants, and because of Russian assistance and of military structures of armed forces to terrorists, and that's why they still keep the part of our territory. So yesterday they shot down a civilian airplane, a passenger's plane, and 89%, I can say, that happened because militants used from that territory they control, they used that anti-aircraft system Buk. Why? Because the strategy they have, and armed forces of Ukraine. There were more of them, but we also there was artillery and aviation aircrafts, and Russians did everything possible for us. They installed almost the same number of provided the same number of tanks and BTRs and and different system of artillery systems up to cannons, portable cannons, and leaders among for those militants like Hirkin and Luhansk, so-called Republic. That is a big change. That makes them happy. But there was an issue with aircrafts. That's why it was a problem for them. That's why during a month and a half, now they are trying to find capabilities to change that situation for the benefit. And they started to use mortars and cannons, mortar cannons, and machine guns, big caliber machine guns, and also portable and land-air systems. Because of the use of those weapons, and we lost some aircrafts, helicopters, Mi-24, 28, and also planes, Il-76 and 26 and 30. Su-25, that's a fighter, and there are some others. But they shot them down, and up to on the height of 3-4 kilometers, and that was probably up to the last period, like 2-3 days ago, because the advantage was on the Ukrainian side, and the leadership of our militants were not happy with that, and they requested during the last weeks to do some changes in terms of assistance from Russia, and to add more capabilities, and with anti-craft systems that could reach higher than 5 kilometers. Unfortunately, we started to get that equipment about 3 days ago. That was Russia also was shooting from their territory. In internet, there is a video how they used the system, Grad system, and salvo-fire systems, and from Rostom Oblast, and they were destroying our planes, IN-26, that's a cargo plane, and it was shot down by missile from Russian territory, and also a fighter Su-25. It was called. And so they used Panzer S1, which is in Russia since 2012, and they did it from their territory. That's why it's very difficult to prove, but there is some evidence. But why Buk, and why from the territory which is under control of militants? And I need to give you some history. 10 years ago, and in the east of our country, they dismantled military units, and because they were playing to those age, and on our military units were taken away from our border with Russia, because it was not clear. Nobody could believe that we would have to fight against Russia, including such approach was realized, and as to those units, anti-air force units in Donetsk, only in Donetsk there were 2 such regiments, and there were such units in Luhansk and Mariupol that all were dismissed. But when Donetsk gang came to power, they were offended. They told, they asked about their presence. Just that they wanted to have some military men. They wanted to have some equipment and some events, and that's why about 4 years ago they found in Bessarabia they found a Bukovsky regiment and redislocated it. And that system book, just for you to have a clear idea, that is a system of anti-air force defense. It's not meant for garden facilities, like cities, towns, etc. Nevertheless, they redislocated from Odessa region to Donetsk region, to Luhansk region, that regiment, and it would reach up to 30 kilometers, and if we take latitude, that's up to 20 kilometers. So it's quite it could not do its task, but at least they did something in the east of Ukraine, in Donetsk region. No, but because of these events, the commander of that regiment was in Donetsk until recently. A week ago, if you're keeping a track of events in Donetsk, and because of the battles there, only a month ago, the command of that regiment, they pushed it out from the city and they redislocated to the airport, where special forces of Ukraine are on the hills. There was a radiolocation station which which an intelligence which helped together with that regiment. But since spring and until now, they took all heavy weapons, and the whole systems were taken away. And there was only just a command, and there was a unit, several units not far from Avdiivka. And there's a place, there's a site higher than the airport, and there was a military from that regiment with light weapons. Militants, several weeks ago, because radiolocation equipment was working, and they came with a big caliber fire gun, and they shoot at that locator. So they ruined it. So several weeks ago, they destroyed that equipment. The stuff is still there, and together with special forces in airport, they are fighting there. Because of recent events, they were informed that they will be attacked, and for 2 days they shoot at them from mortars. Why I speak in such details? Because I would like to underline that the staff of that regiment has only light on arms, and all the rest of the equipment was taken away. So if you look at the perimeter or the territory under control of militants, and if you at least 30 kilometers, you can move it, but then it would not reach that point where in the air 10 kilometers high, the boy was flying 10 kilometers high, and you could look at the point where it fell at the side, because it was shot down on the latitude of 10 kilometers, and for some time fragments of it were falling down along the movement of this. So in theory, it shows that even if they wanted, that's the system. Ukrainian armed forces would not be able to shoot down that plane, because they were far away from that place. And now about the events. 2 days ago, because of transparency, because our border is thin, is not defended. One more Russian strategy. They always use. They're trying to use that equipment they have. They provide that the same like we have in Ukraine. Then, as mass media, you should know that that equipment they try to arrest it and then they provide it to militants. It's not provided from Russia, but they capture militants, capture it, and that's what they are saying. Yes, it happens. Such examples take place, like BMP, some tanks, but a few only. Secondly, we should clearly understand that is quite a complicated equipment, even tank and armored vehicle. It requires about four people, a crew of four, and you have to train them. They should be trained to work in harmony, and all then they could work together. And Hirkin wants them to fight with that using that equipment even yesterday. That's why they also provide from Russia Russian crews.
And that is done secretly. That's an example like in Crimea, without insignia. They enter with the equipment because it's impossible to train them there. The anti-aircraft missile equipment, launchers, that's also the equipment where the crew is needed. The soldiers just execute some simple functions, but first of all, there are some special officers trained, and if you put experts, send them there, still time is needed to train them, especially for that equipment. But that equipment was transported to the region Snizhne across the border of Ukraine, because in these regions, as I proved, for 3 days they are executing the new strategic approach as to destroying our aviation by the means transferred by Russia to militants, but they are transferred together with the crews at the points where the Ukrainian armed forces aviation is used. And for 3 days they were full enthusiasm. They were downing some aircraft, and they were trying to down more, and they did not think that the civil aircraft are flying at the height of 10,000 meters. This zone was closed, but they shot, and this tragedy happened. You probably saw and heard the negotiations. The colonel of the State Intelligence Department of Russia was very cynically clarifying the circumstances. Even if that was where the civil aircraft downed, maybe there were some things which would help them to explain that that was done by Ukraine. He was asking questions whether any weapons were found, could that weapons be connected to the aircraft so that they can show that these are the armed forces of Ukraine who did it. And people, when he was not interested in people, he was the one who was reporting was more concerned. This grouping of Bezler, his nickname is Bes, in the region of Gorlovka, and the checkpoint which they started, the Kazatsky checkpoint near Snizhne. There were big battles going on. Our aviation was used there, and for 2 days they were operating there. There are even the photographs in the internet, not yesterday, but 2 days ago, this book equipment, and then book was used. I can tell you, as a person who served a lot, from the point of view of servicing this anti-aircraft missile launcher, that is very simple objective. That's a big aircraft, That's a big spot on the screen of the indicator. And those people who are servicing, those people who were shooting, for them, they just cynically did it. I cannot say that they knew exactly that that is a passenger aircraft, knowing that they destroyed it. But I'm military. I know what is the death, what is the war. But I don't want to believe that because I don't have information or any grounds to believe that they knew that that's a civil aviation aircraft. They probably believed that that is another transportation aircraft, and the target seemed to be very easy. And they were discussing, they believed that was transportation, and they were discussing, and they found out that that's not the transportation aircraft, but the civil aviation aircraft. But because that happened, and that event, those who are elder know probably that there was such an event, such a case with South Korean Boeing in Soviet times. You know what were the circumstances or the consequences? What was the attitude of the Soviet Union for several years after that? The world community was against that, and you remember what was the attitude. And there was the question whether it entered the territory or not of the Soviet Union. If it entered the territory, looking at the rules of those times, they could have done that. But here it's obvious that this corridor, every day, this flight was going over Donbass every day. But the tragedy happened yesterday, and when it was found out, I would like to emphasize a different representative of the Russian State Intelligence Department, Igor Stretkov, personally came to Snizhne and organized today at night sending of that equipment back to Russia across the border. And if you look even in the internet, you can see that it's pulled, it's not driving itself, but it's pulled because they need to take it out sooner. And it's missing one missile. They can say that that was the case originally, but as an expert, I believe I have the evidence with which I would like to convince you about what happened, how it was happening, and who's behind it. Thank you. Thank you for very detailed expert explanation. Questions? BTB TV channel, I would like to clarify. You mentioned that on the territory of Ukraine there were no powerful anti-aircraft launchers. I didn't say that. I said that on the territory they were not there until recently. They were not on the territory which is under the militants, and the anti-aircraft units of the armed forces don't have them. Several months ago they took them away, and some of the personnel of Donetsk Regiment is still there. The armed forces of Ukraine do have book systems, and they are on the territory of Ukraine in the armed forces, but they were not in this area. Even if they wanted, they wouldn't be able to get them. Now, if you have a question. Then the question from me, from Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, the evidence base that was presented by the Speaker of the National Defense and Security Council and Mr. Nalyvaichenko demonstrate that the terrorists were involved into this catastrophe, but also American military experts talk that the terrorists were involved, but they also do not exclude that Russia could have been involved into that. They do not exclude the situation when maybe our military who were conducting anti-aircraft operations, anti-terrorist operations, were involved into that, but also Russia. I believe that 99%, I'm 99% sure that the aircraft was downed by Buk system, which is Russian, and that is the system which was transported from Russia, and it was used there for 2 days. After they saw what tragedy happened, they personally, and Girkin personally, was trying to get this equipment back to Russia as soon as possible. So use of that equipment, this equipment was used by terrorists, and terrorists have all the photo recordings from the space satellite recordings. What can they say looking at this data from the space? They have the information, they have the photo where they see the stars even of the military. In Soviet times, Americans made a photograph, it was back in 60s and 70s, to demonstrate their investigation capacities. They sent this photo to Brezhnev, and they, I don't remember, Lieutenant Sidorov at such a site is servicing such an equipment to demonstrate what they can do. But a week after that, they received also the survey, the photograph made by Soviets from the space of some American company, which underground were throwing the wastewaters. So basically the Soviets were demonstrating that if Americans see something on the ground, the Soviets see things under the ground. But they saw definitely how the equipment was used, and the equipment as air, how the aircraft was, how the aircraft exploded. What should be the qualification of the person who uses this equipment? Are there many people like that who can shoot so accurately? I was trying to tell that, but I will repeat or add something. Those people who service, that is a collective weapon, the anti-aircraft missile launcher. It's not for 2 or 3 persons to use it. This should be people who are servicing it. They are to be prepared, coordinated. As a rule, they had to shoot before. And the main role, I would like to emphasize it, is played by officers. The soldiers are just the secondary specialists, and the main role is played by the officers, not just in decision-making, but when they eliminate the targets in the air. So this professional level should be very advanced, and in a short time frame. If they recruited people from Donetsk, Lugansk, the People's Republics, they wouldn't be able to use this equipment, which was brought there a couple of days before. As far as I know, the anti-aircraft launcher book requires additional trucks or machines to function. can that system be used autonomously? There is such a piece which could be autonomous, and they used it. You say that the battery is the firing unit, but out of that whole complex, and this complex has division, they were part of the brigade, but here they used minimum firing unit which can conduct an investigation or scouting, seizure of the target and eliminating the target. This whole thing could be done by this unit, and that's what they did. Then a question from me. The evidence that Americans have, you have, is that enough evidence to definitely say which side is guilty? I can answer somehow. I will be trying to answer that. But on the other hand, there's no answer to that question, depending on how you would, on what would you perceive it. As a specialist, I want to say that I was trying to prove to mass media that that is enough to see that a big tragedy took place, but that it was organized. I cannot say that they were targeting the civil aircraft. I'm not saying that. But they were getting there gradually, and they were committing the actions that I mentioned. As expert, I believe that's enough evidence. But we hope that the Commission and the international community will do enough so that this is sufficient proof for everyone. Thank you for coming to us. We had Mr. Ihor Romanenko, military expert, professor. Thank you.